This creates an administrative matrix: GS Paper 1 for Geography and Ecology, GS2 for Polity, GS3 covering the economy, and GS5 for Assam Urban Governance. As we populate this matrix, a specific pattern emerges, a developmental paradox currently unfolding across the state. One half of this pattern is defined by a rapid push for infrastructure modernization and economic expansion. The other half reveals a fracturing of foundational ecological and urban frameworks. We begin with GS Paper 1. This image captures the ecological stakes at Kaziranga National Park, where a breakdown in environmental jurisprudence threatens the habitat's survival. The most critical vulnerability point for the park is actually outside its borders, in the Karbi Anglong catchment area. The Supreme Court issued strict directives that explicitly ban mining and related activities along Kaziranga's southern boundary. Yet, on the ground, regulatory inertia within the Forest Department has allowed these directives to be ignored. This topographical map shows the reality. Expanding settlements threaten the 9 animal corridors connecting Kaziranga to the Karbi Anglong highlands. Illegal constructions physically sever these pathways, triggering severe habitat degradation extending into the North Karbi Anglong Wildlife Sanctuary. Animals require this connected landscape to maintain a healthy gene pool and follow natural migration patterns. Furthermore, these elevated highlands provide the only refuge for wildlife during severe annual floods. Kaziranga cannot survive as an isolated island. Its existential viability depends entirely on preserving the park and the Karbi Anglong highlands as a single, contiguous ecological block. Moving to GS Paper 2, we evaluate polity and governance through the dual scales of state administration. At the macro level, Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma recently engaged in high-level policy formulation during a Niti Aayog interaction with Northeastern leaders. The central focus was a tripartite Memorandum of Understanding signed between the Government of India, Assam, and Nagaland. The operational goal is to facilitate mineral oil exploration in the highly sensitive Assam-Nagaland boundary areas. This agreement functions as a textbook example of cooperative federalism, turning historical border disputes into shared economic dividends. We must contrast this high-level diplomacy with the micro-level reality of localized accountability in Kamrup District. Faculty teams from the District Institute of Education and Training conducted surprise inspections across private schools. Their objective is to enforce the National School Bag Policy 2020 and check violations regarding private publisher textbooks. This action ensures that educational institutions comply with statutory weight limits to protect student welfare. High-level interstate treaties remain hollow if a state lacks the bureaucratic rigor to enforce grassroots compliance and protect its most vulnerable citizens. Shifting to GS Paper 3, we analyze the economy and infrastructure through the physical modernization of the state capital. A 200 crore rupee revamped distribution sector scheme is slated for Guwahati's major corridors. This illustrates the core engineering shift, converting overhead distribution systems into an underground network. The project utilizes high-density polyethylene crossings to protect lines at vulnerable intersections and incorporates flood-resilient placement of over 100 ring main units and feeder pillar boxes. The commercial imperative here is straightforward: delivering uninterrupted, high-quality power supply to strategically dense load pockets and the critical airport corridor. Upgrading the physical hardware optimizes voltage regulation and significantly reduces overall power transmission losses. The secondary benefits include improving city aesthetics and eliminating the public safety risks associated with live overhead lines. However, completing this city-wide conversion will require an estimated 2,000 crore rupees, underscoring the massive scale of the challenge. True economic modernization requires transitioning from fragile legacy systems to structurally resilient, climate-adapted infrastructure capable of sustaining high commercial density. We pull back to our final matrix quadrant, GS Paper 5, to evaluate the ultimate livability of the state capital. The Guwahati Municipal Corporation recently announced an initiative to rebrand Guwahati as India's Purple City. The aesthetic is culturally rooted, proposing to paint infrastructure in shades of magenta to match the Kopu Fool, the state's foxtail orchid. But residents have countered with a practical demand: livability before color. This raises questions about the sequence and priority of civic resource allocation. The structural reality directly contrasts with the branding. Pre-monsoon rains routinely cause anthropogenic artificial flooding that paralyzes the city. These floods are driven by unregulated hill cutting, choked and outdated drainage networks, and poor waste management. Drawing directly from our GS Paper 1 analysis, the destruction of natural wetland buffers for real estate development forms the root cause of this urban flooding. Connecting back to GS Paper 3, building a 200 crore rupee underground power grid achieves little if the streets above it routinely turn into stagnant lakes. Pursuing cosmetic beautification while basic civic functions fail represents a misallocation of administrative will. A robust state blueprint cannot be painted onto failing infrastructure. Sustainable urban identity demands prioritizing subterranean fundamentals, drainage, ecology, and accountability over superficial symbolism.